All right, let's begin. It's a nice, easy daf, so it'll be very quick. Today's daf. We're daf Nun Zayin Omer Aleph, and it's a very small daf to the next page. The Gemara begins. Tonu Rabbonim. The rabbis taught Ben Boyhahan Nosam Pe'el Yerek. Ben, the son of Boyhayan, was a farmer, and his son was running the business. Okay, and the son gave Peah, like free matnas aniyim on vegetables. Now the Gemara said before that vegetables are potter and peah. That means you don't have to give peah. But he thought he's being a nice guy, giving peah, giving a corner of the vegetable patch to the aniyim. Uva Aviv and his father came. Umatzon laniyim. He finds the poor people shayatun in yerek. They are carrying bundles of vegetables, and they're by the door of the garden, leaving with their spoils. The problem with that is that you can't give. The problem with giving them the yerek is it's not tithed. So when they, one of the things about gifts to the poor is that you don't have to tithe them. So like peah, maasros, you don't have to give off a special tax on them. But here they're potter from giving peah. So therefore they had to, before you give it to the ani, you had to take off the taxes. You had to take off trumas and maasros on it. And these aniyim were carrying vegetables that were not tithed. You have to be very careful when you speak to aniyim. Amalem, so the father said to them, to the poor people, Bonai, my children. So he addressed them. He addressed the poor people as my children. Hashlichu ma'aleichem. We are holding Nun Zayin Omer Aleph about 6 lines from the top. He said, Hashlichu ma'aleichem. Throw down the vegetables. Va'ani noisin lechem kiflayim. I'm going to give you double the amount of vegetables that you took. B'me'usar. B'me'usar means I'll give them tithe. In other words, let me take off the maasros on it. And he said, I'm going to give you double the amount that you took. And he told them, it's not because I'm stingy and I don't want you to have this. I do want you to have it. Chachamim said, you don't give peah on vegetables. So you took this peah, and you weren't supposed to take it, and it's tevel, because we didn't take off the tax that trumas and maasros on it. So put it back. Let me take off trumas and maasros, and I'm going to give you double. So he's a very nice person, this father, but this boy Hayam. And his son messed up. So the Gemara says, why did he have to tell the aniyim? It's not because my eyes, I'm cheap. Why just tell him, put it back, and I'm going to give it to you, I'm going to let you take it again. So the aniyim should not say that chuya kamat chilon. He's trying to push us off. He doesn't want us to take it. He's taking it all back. So you have to explain to the aniyim why you're asking them to put it back. The only example, an example I could give you, a modern day example, is if somehow you give an ani comes to your house and you write him a check, and then you realize you gave him from the wrong bank account. So when you ask him to give back the check, you have to explain to him the whole situation, that you want to give him more, and you gave him from the wrong bank account because they have they feel so bad inside that if you start telling them to give it back, even for a moment, they'll start thinking, oh, he regretted giving me the tzedakah. So that's why you have to explain to them, I'm not stingy. I want you to have it, but let me tithe it first, and that you can take double. The Gemara says like this, Tonu Rabbonim. Now here, the Gemara is just talking about, we always have a romantic vision of how things looked in the Beis HaMikdash, but the Gemara gives you the reality of it. Tonu Rabbonim, that sometimes there was not nice things happening in the Beis HaMikdash. B'Rishayna, in the beginning, the skins of the oilers and the chatas and the karbonis belong as a gift to the kohen that did the avodah. They were called every day of the week. Another Beis Av did it. Beis Av is a subset of a family, and each week one family, a mishmar, was responsible for that week. So every week one mishmar took over that week of the service of the Beis HaMikdash, And every day of the week, a subset family called a Beis Av would be the one doing the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara says, the skins of all the karbonos of that day, they would put it belishkas Beis HaParva, in an office in the Beis Hamikdash on the north. Le'erev, at nighttime, they were divided l'anshe Beis Av, to the people of the Beis Av, of the subset family that served in the Beis Hamikdash that day. That was their gift, the take-home gift, have some skins of the animals. But v'hoyu ba'lis royos, they were very strong and bullies, like Noitlin Oislim Bezroya. They would grab it with might. In other words, they would take it and not be fair about it. So Hiskinu, so the Chachamim made a rule. At the end of the week, they would divide up the skins. Not every night, but Friday afternoon, so to speak, the whole family divided up the skins of the entire week. Dasin kulam mishmores, all the entire family, v'shaklam ba'adodi, and they would divide it up. So you have more people involved. So, it looks like they attempted to be fair about it. But the Gemara says, v'adayin hoya gedoyle kuna. There were some, people who thought of themselves as great kohanim and better than the rest of the families. Noitlun oisem b'zroya. They would take it by force. They would say, listen, I'm more chashiv. I'm a rabbi somewhere during the week, so I really deserve much more. And it wasn't divided up fairly. Amdu bailam, so all the Kahanim got together and said, we're no more taking skins of the karbonis. V'egdishon l'shamayim, and they made it hegdish to heaven. And they didn't want to take it anymore. So now that solves the problem. If they gifted it back to the Beis Hamikdash. And all these skins add up. And the Gemara says, Amru, Chazal tell us, yamamu atim, there wasn't the little days that passed. It took a little while. They would cover the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, of the Heichal, of the Holy Temple, with tiles of gold. Shein aman amma, each tile was an amma by an amma, ka'oive dinrei zav, like the thickness of a coin. In other words, they were able to collect so much money and sell the skins and then have a nice tile in the Beis Hamikdash using and putting it down. And that was a donation of the Kahanim. V'leregel, and during Yom Tov time, hoya makaplin oisem, they would peel it off, and they would put it by the steps, an outside area of Harabayas, so the people who are oile regel that came to visit the temple during Yom Tov would see, this was the donation of the Kahanim. The Kahanim, just from the skins alone, were able to make a nice floor of gold. So they would see that there was a nice, that the work was beautiful. The ain bom dalam. There's no poverty in the Beis Hamikdash, that even the Kahanim don't, take every gift that they're entitled to. In fact, they give it back to the Beis Hamikdash. Tanur, we learned in the Brisa. Abba Shol Omer. Again, this tells you that it wasn't so romantic living at that time. Abba Shol says, Koirosh shel shikma haya berichai. There was a lot of sycamore trees in Yerichai. Koiros means like a tree trunks, right, of sycamore trees in Yerichai, and that was an expensive tree. Balis royes, there were bullies or ganovim, people of the mob, so to speak. Noitlin oisem b'zroya, that would take it and steal it from people by force. Now, it's interesting thing about the mob. So they do have standards. So the Omdu Bailam, the owners of these sycamore trees would do, V'egdishim l'shamayim. They made it, they gifted it to the Beis Hamikdash. So once they gifted it to the Beis Hamikdash, the mob didn't touch it. Because that far they're not going to do. If the owner gifted it to the Beis Hamikdash, they're not going to steal from the Holy Temple. They'll steal from an individual, but once it's Hegdish already, they laid back. They laid off. Aleim, of these type of people, and similar type of people, Amma Abba Shol ben Batnish, Mishum Abba Yosef ben Chanan. Abba Shol, the son of Batnish, said in the name of Abba Yosef ben Chanan, that he's quoting now what you would think famous families that lived at the time of the temple. or maybe afterwards, that were just rotten people. Oily, it's bad to us, the base spices, from the family of bices. Oily ma'alosin. Woe to us is from their sticks. I mean, they were part of the mob. Oily mi base chanin. Wait, it's bad to us from this family called Chanin. Oily milichshasam. From they give bad advice to the people. Oily mi base kasrus. The family of Kasrus is also very bad. Oilimi Kulmosan, they're pens. In other words, they always writing bad letters to the government about the Jewish people. They're always, writing Lashon Hara to the Goyim about us. Oilimi Beis Yishmael ben Piachi, from the family of Yishmael ben Piachi. Oilimi Agroifan, let's protect ourselves and woe to us from their fists. So basically, what the Gemara just listed off, very well-known bad families, that just everybody in that family was a rotten apple, and they caused a lot of problems to the Jewish people. Either they themselves were stealing from people, or they were inciting the Goyim against Jewish people. The Gemara says, that not only that, they were in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Shehein kohanim gedolim. They ran the temple, and they ran it like a family business. Uvneim Gizbarim. Their sons were the people in charge of the Beis Hamikdash. V'chasneihem, and the son-in-laws, Amar Kolim, were the treasurers. V'avdeihem, those that worked for them, Choyftines on b'maklis, would whack the people with sticks. In other words, there are certain people, certain families, that by force, I don't know, they just took over the temple, and they put in all their sons and son-in-laws, and they made it a family business, the temple, and it ruined the holiness of the temple. So the Gemara says we have to remember those families for the bad things that they did. Tanu Rabbanim, the rabbis taught, Arba Tzvachi Sofcha Ezra Rishayna. There are 4 cries that come out from heaven. Tzavcha Azara Rishayna. There's like a bas coil from heaven that comes out of the Azara, right? And 2 of them are not nice, and 2 of them are nice. So first thing that's not nice, the bas coil, the voice from heaven says, Tzu mekam b'nei Eli, get out of here, my Mishkan, the sons of Eli. Shetimu heichal Hashem. They defiled the Mishkan of God. And we know from Tanakh that the sons of Eli were not proper children, Chafni and Pinchas, and they didn't treat the people right when they ran the Mishkan. And then there's another voice from heaven says, Say Mekan, get out from Beis Hamikdash. Look at this person. This person that ran the Beis Hamikdash, he was a Kohen Gadol. His name was Ish Yisachar. Ish Kvar Barkai. He was from the town of Barkai. What did he do wrong? What was wrong with him? He respected himself and defiled Kodshe Shemaim. Why? He would cover his hands with like a gloves or something like that, and he would do the service. Because he was so mefunik, he didn't want to get his hands dirty, messy, germy, or whatever. He was a germaphobe or something like that. And that's how we did the service of the Beis Hamikdash. And he was a tough guy. Nobody said anything. But the truth is that a service done when the Kohen is wearing gloves is puzzle, because there's a chatzitza there. So we're going to learn about the Yisach Ish Kvar Bakoi, that he's going to get punished because of such an act. We'll learn that in a moment. Those were the 2 things the Baskol said bad things about people who were running the Beis Hamikdash. But there's a baskoil, there's a voice from heaven that cries out in the temple. It says, gates, lift up your heads, so to speak, and allow the Yikones Yishmael ben Piachi. This Yishmael ben Piachi should come in. Talmidei shel Pinchas. He is a student of Pinchas. In other words, not really a student, but he follows in the way of Pinchas in the Chumash. The Yishamish Bekuna Gedol, let him be a Kohen Gadol. So he himself was a tzaddik. What's interesting about this person, Yishmael ben Piachi, is what we learned before, that his family was bad people. Because we learned before, Oili mi beis Yishmael ben Piachi. Oili mi agroifim. His family was like a bunch of thugs. From there, they ruled with a fist. But he himself was a nice person. And he himself was a tzaddik, considered a student of Pinchas in the Chumash. and there's a baskel that said he should come in to be the Kohen Gadol. And the Beis Hamikdash gave a baskoil, a voice from heaven came out and said, open up your gates, lift your head, so to speak, and allow the Yekonis Yochanan ben Narbai Talmidishim Pinkai. Yochanan, the son of Narbai, the student of Ben Pinkai, and let him be a Kohen. Let him be the main Kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. What was so special? Let him fill his stomach from the karbonos of Shemayim. Because Amru Olav a Yochanan ben Narbai, it was said about this Yochanan ben Narbai, what a tzaddik he was, that he raised a lot of Kehanim in his house. In other words, Kehanim were generally poor people. And, some of them were homeless. And he ran his house collecting money and ran his house. The food in his house, he every day was Gimel Me'as Agolam. He ate 300 calves every day. Gimel Me'as Garba Yayin. And he drank 300 bottles of wine. And he ate 40 pounds of pigeons as the appetizer. In other words, he didn't just raise Kahanim, he fed them well. To run a household like that, this is like an exaggeration, but to run a household like that, he had to raise a lot of money and a lot of personal expense. Amru, but he was so careful about the karbonos. Amru, Chazal told us, called Yomov Shel Yochanan ben Narbai le'nimtza noiser b'mikdash. There was never noiser, nothing left over in the Beis Hamikdash. There's some karbonos that the Kahanim have a mitzvah to eat it. Now, if you're eating karbonos every day, you just leave it over. You're not in the mood. He made sure that he was in the mood and that there was never nothing left over. So because it's a big mitzvah to eat the kohen should eat the carbon of the person that brought it, because by the kohen eating it, the person that brought it gets a kapara. And so he made sure, treated it with such respect that nothing was left over. Now the Gemara concludes our perek and our daf. What was the end story with Yisachar from the Kar Barkai? To remind you, he put on gloves because he didn't want to get his hands messy, germy, dealing with the kachim. And therefore, what was the end of his story? Amru, so they said a story like this. Listen what happened to him. Malkul Sahaba Yosri. There was a king and queen sitting, and they were Jewish kings, but not really Jewish. They're from the Malchis Beis Chashmonai. They were from the Malchus Beis Chashmonai, but they weren't Jewish, obviously. You'll see in a moment. And they had a debate, a silly debate. Malka Amma, the queen said, Gad Yayai, the goats are better meat than the sheep. It's nicer to have goat meat. Umalkas, that was the king said it. Umalkasa Amri, but the queen said, Imra Yai, the better food is sheep's meat. So who's going to decide this debate? Amru, Man Moichach. Who's going to decide our debate, our little debate? Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol in the Beis Hamikdash. Why? The Komansa Karbonis called Yoma. He's bringing Karbonis in the Beis Hamikdash every day. Some people are bringing goats. Some people are bringing sheep. We're going to ask him to decide what tastes better. Asa Ihu. So this Yisachar, Ish Kvar Barkai, came into the meeting. And Achve Biyade. He waved his hand like the king is a nut. Rashi says, Bilshain to imply as a jest. If the goat was a better animal to eat, Yisik Latmida, then why didn't God say that the carbon tumid that we bring every day should be from a goat? So the fact that God says, as a keves echod hasababeki, that comes from a sheep, is a proof that the sheep is a better meat. So Amar Malka. So the king said, right, he did not show respect for the king. He just waved his hand as if I'm a nut. Nifsuku lemini. Let's cut his right hand off. So Yav Shaykhet, he gave this Yisachar gave a bribe to the person that was supposed to cut off his head. And he said, cut off my left hand. But again, so he thought he got away with it. Shma Malka, the king heard that his left hand got cut off, and he requested that the right hand of his be cut off. So they cut off his right hand. So the end result was he showed disrespect to Kachim. In the end result, he found himself in a situation where both of his hands was cut off. Amar Rav Yosef says, but you got to thank God for something like this. Why? The Ashkela Yisocha Ish Kfar Bakai limit tarpese mine bahai almo. He got his payment in this world. In other words, that sometimes when a person gets a very bad punishment, there's a way to thank God for it, that you'll know when you get to the next world, you're not going to have to deal with this anymore because you got your punishment in this world. And limitar per se, it comes from a word. Limitar means to watch, per se, the hands. His hands are guarded in the next world because he got punished. His hands got punished in this world. So that's how Rabbi Yosef interpreted that story. Amar Ravashi concludes our parak. Yisacha ish kfar bakoi loy tramas nisan. He never learned Mishnayos, because if Yisacha learned Mishnayos, he would have known there is no difference between goat meat and sheep meat. Why? You find it in the Mishnayos. The Tanan. We learned in the Mishnah, Rab Shimon Oimer, kvasim kaidmin leizim. Sheeps sometimes get usually sheeps in the Chumash, it says sheeps before goats. B'chol malkah. I would think because they taste better, that's why the Chumash, when it gives you a choice to bring a carbon, it tells you if you want to bring a sheep, bring a goat, bring a goat. But the fact that the Torah says the word sheep first is because the Torah's preference is that you bring a sheep. That's not true. Talmud Loime in keves yavi karbonoi, it uses the same word in keves yavi karbonoi, and that is in the prior pasuk. Rashi brings down. It says the word seira, that the Torah talked about a goat, and then it talked about a sheep. So we find a place in the Chumash that where the Torah says, my preference is you bring a goat and then a sheep. So sometimes the Torah says sheep first and then goat, and sometimes the Torah says goat first and then sheep first. That they're both equal in the eyes of God. There's no difference between a sheep and a goat. Ravina says, even Chumash, this Yisacha Ish Kfar Bakai didn't know. If he knew how to read Chumash, he would have answered it that they're both the same. The Ksiv, the pasuk says in Kasev, in Kaves, in Aves. The Torah says by Shlomim, and the Torah doesn't say which one you should bring. It says in Kaves and Aves. Iboya Kaves Laisi. If you want to bring a Kaves, Iboya Aves Laisi. If you want to bring a goat, bring a goat. The Torah seems to say in Kaves and Aves. It uses the same language, and it doesn't seem to the Torah to bring a preference. So this person, Yisachar, he seemed to be ignorant of the Mishnayos, ignorant of the Chumash, and because of that, he gave a bad answer, and he said that the sheep is more preferable. So, and that led to his being, mocking the king, so to speak. In the end, he got it wrong because the Shekula name, they're both the same. Whatever this Gemara means, there's a lot of hidden meanings in it. We're just learning here to learn the plain pshat of the Gemara. And so ends the daf. I want to point out to you that we finished the parak of Mokum Shanago, which basically dealt with the minhagim of Erev Pesach. Should you work? Should you not work? And minhagim and other places of areas of Torah, whether you work in Tisha B'av and other many different things that we saw in this parak. But what's interesting, it says Slikalam Pesach Rishon, because originally, and 1,000 years ago, Masechta Pesachim was divided probably in Pesach A and Pesach B. That's why it's called Pesachim. We combined it into one Masechta, because the first part of this Masechta dealt with the chametz a little bit and some of the matzah. The second part of this parak is the second chapter, what we're going to start tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, deals with Kachim, deals with the Carbon Pesach. And that was called, let's say, Pesach Sheni, the second, you have Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis. You have Pesach Aleph, Masechta Pesach Aleph, and Masechta Pesach Beis. And later on, they combined it into one Masechta, into one Masechta, calling it Pesachim. But for the now, from tomorrow on, for the next 40 blot, we're going to start something very new, which deals with the Hilchas Carbon Pesach, a new idea. And although we don't have the Beis Hamikdash, it'll be some things that we're not familiar, but it'll be a nice eye opener as we see how things were done in the Beis Hamikdash. And then we'll end the Masechta. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Then we'll end the Masechta with Seder night. And that's how it ends. I think that the last parak at one time was put over here. So we talked, the last parak deals with how the Seder night and the Haggadah and all that. That's the last Seder. That they say the 10th parak of Masechta Pesachim was actually over here, part of Pesach Rishon. Anyway, so that.
Bernard, yesterday, I read it too quickly. It was Shabbos. So we don't, going back to the tithing of the vegetables. So you don't tithe any vegetable at all?
Only a the reason why we don't tithe them vegetable is because they don't last. It's not like wheat where you could put it into a silo and they per se they get rotten very fast. But the Gemara did say about a leek, I think, that
a turnip,
whatever, right? A turnip that the leaf, yes, and not the turnip itself. So some of it you give, but
that's why I got mixed up. Okay,
right. But most of the time you don't bring the vegetables.
Got it. Okay, all right.
Good.
Shkoyach.
Okay, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. 8:30.